welcome all of you to today's community show. In this show, we talk about a number of issues that affect and pertain the society in which we live, Uganda, our different communities, and specifically today, we are holding this community show to honor the African child. On the 16th of June every year, the world reflects on the African child. This is specifically in memory of the children in South Africa about 50 years ago who lost their lives. So this day was specifically put aside to honor the African child, to celebrate, honor, and also bring to the attention the issues that affect and impact the African child. For purposes of this conversation, a child is someone who is below 18 years. Some jurisdictions up to 21, name it, but for purposes of this conversation, we shall go with the general, which is below 18 years. And today's topic is of great importance because it is pertaining something that is ubiquitous, something that is common, and something that is unavoidable. That is the digital era and the digital rights. How can the child, an African child, navigate through this territory of the digital rights? How is the African child being competitive, but also measuring with the world standards when it comes to digital rights? And how safe are the digital spaces to the African child? How much do they highlight the needs, aspirations of the African child? To help us understand this and give this conversation perspective, I'm joined by phenomenal people here who are asked to introduce themselves. We shall begin with Marion, Viola, Lynn, and good luck, in that order.
Good morning, welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Tina Stella Marion, and I am a communication consultant. I am also passionate about supporting the girl child and youth, women, and community initiatives. Grateful to be here.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Viola Amungire, the founder and CEO at Wena. Wena is a construction app. We are basically helping you reduce how much time and how much you're spending on your construction project. I look forward to this discussion on how we as Africans and how the internet is affecting.
Things good luck. I am a journalist. I'm also on social media. I follow a lot of events around the world. I'm happy to be part of this panel as we look and in memory of the African child and also about their rights. Everyone is welcome. Thanks.
My name is Akululin Tasha, and I work with Reach a Hand Uganda as a communications and advocacy officer. So Reach a Hand Uganda is a youth-centered organization. We focus on young people. It's youth serving, but in the field of sexual reproductive health, livelihoods, HIV awareness, and prevention.
Thank you very much for the warm introductions. Now we shall dive into this conversation, and I want to begin with you, Lynn. In simple terms, help us understand what when we talk about African child and remembering of the African child, what specifically comes to your mind, and what would you want to see being highlighted this year, of course, following the Day of the African Child? What would you want to be given primacy when it comes to the African child in the digital rights space?
Thank you so much. So when I think about the Day of the African Child, like you said in your introduction, we remember the South African children who died. But what comes to mind besides that is just basically being an African child in general. African child in Uganda, in any other country in Africa, not just South Africa. And I think what I would want to see highlighted most is, and it's part of that, it's actually the topic of discussion today, the digital spaces. We realize we're in a world where everything is moving digital, like everything is really moving very fast and is moving digital. And that's a trend right now. Everything is just online. Gone are the days when we would get our first phones growing up, maybe at campus. Right now, young people children can actually have access to these phones. They can have access to all these things, even at a very, very, very young age. So everything is really moving so fast. And as we can all tell that everything is moving so fast, COVID in a way also heightened this move, because we're home for almost 2 years and everything moved digital. So the digital space has both the positives and negatives. So for the African child, the world, we are behind. We have tried to catch up, yes, but we are somehow behind. Not every area in Uganda has access to technology. We know that most people in Kampala are the ones that have access to these digital gadgets. The biggest percentage is in Kampala. Either way, so even in the hard to reach areas, the digital spaces are not more like maybe phones, but maybe a radio. So how do we catch up? How do we catch up with the world? But then how do we keep safe as well? Because we know what comes with the digital spaces. There is a lot of exploitation, there is a lot of violence, sexual violence and abuse on these online spaces. There is a lot of data and safety, and our data is just there. There is no privacy to our data. So that's what I would want to see highlighted in this. And how can young people actually benefit from these spaces as well? How can we as young people, the African children, benefit from these spaces? Because that's where the world is headed. But how can we do this by also being safe and staying protected? We've seen so many cases of mental health cases have risen, and people are committing suicide because of these same online spaces that are supposed to help us and be of importance. How do we then create innovative ways to reach out to young people in hard to reach areas? Maybe a young person in Koboko who doesn't have access to a smartphone. How do we then reach out to them with maybe information that is important to them so that they can be able to catch up with the trends as well? So that's what I would want to see highlighted and maybe discussed in this conversation as well.
All right, thank you very much for giving us what you wish to see highlighted. Now, to also give more perspective on this day that was celebrated on the 16th. So, like I said before, it's in honor of the children killed in Soweto, in the Soweto uprising in 1976 in South Africa, and it is meant to also bring to light circumstances of children and also honor the rights of children. So specifically that day was designated for the African child for that, and this year's theme as chosen by the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of Children, and of course consequently adopted by the African Union, is specifically the rights of the child in the digital environment. Now, to also give more context, is it has been stated by again that committee that internet access and usage, of course, has increased, but and in Africa specifically, there's about 590 million internet users, which is below the threshold of of how many people should be connected to the internet, considering that in other places, other continents in Europe, it's perhaps beyond 70% connectivity. in many countries, let's say the Scandinavian countries, about over 90% connectivity. However, in Africa, it's 590 million, and that is about 43% of the entire African population, which stands about 1.2 billion people. And however, 1/3 of those people, or 1/3 of the internet users in Africa, are children, which shows an increasing demographic of internet users, which are young people. And it's seen that young people will continue to use the internet. 1/3 of internet users being young people, I think it's significant to show the growing trends. But again, it's also a bit low considering that young people are more in Africa. So that could also give a good context. And among the things that are being looked at is, of course, accessibility, but also safety, as Lynn has talked about some of these issues. Now, I want to continue with Marion. What, in your perspective, do you think what are some of those most important aspects in this digital environment and in the digital space that you want to see being prioritized when it comes to the child, and specifically the African child, whom, let's say, more or less the odds are against in this global cyber village?
All right, thank you, Martin. First of all, I love to start by saying that the African child embodies resilience. They have defied all odds in their fight for survival within systems that usually are not really supporting them. Every day they strive to assert their existence and have their voices heard, because growing up in the past years, kids are just meant to be seen around and not really to do anything. But with the advance of technology and digital transformation and internet, kids now have access to powerful tools to raise their voices, to express themselves, as much as we have challenges, of course, that come with such developments. For me, what are some of the things that I want to see is businesses that develop some of these technologies that provide the platforms should be cautious of children who use these platforms. So they need to come up with products, putting into thought safety and the privacy of children online. So that means they need to incorporate things like parental controls, age-appropriate content, and reporting mechanisms for abuse. We need to see more businesses doing that, even as they come up with technology. They should have mechanisms to control the different people that use these platforms, especially children. And then the other thing also falls on parents. The parents are the first line of defense in everything that we are discussing here, because at the end of the day, kids can't afford these things on their own unless their parents give them the backing that they need to get some of these platforms or these tools. So parents have to be actively protecting their kids and guide them in setting up safety channels online and putting parental controls. So as much as we allow our kids to access to these platforms, the digital platforms, they are safe. So parents need to wake up and stop leaving technology to raise their kids. They should be actively participating. I want to see businesses, government, parents being more active in how technology is shaping or how digital platforms are actually influencing kids. So that's something I would love to see. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to Viola, what do you wish to see being given priority when it comes to the African child and in the context of the digital environment?
what I would love to see us implement, because I'm one of the service providers online, is for us to be able to track who our users are in terms of demographics. And in case anybody is selling age-sensitive information or product, how are they able to know that the users that are actually consuming their products are people that are supposed to be consuming these products? So yes, most of the panelists have already mentioned the need to put safety measures, the need to ensure that the parents are giving guidance. But then as people that are doing business online, we also need to be able to go beyond just putting these measures, but being able to verify that if while signing up, if I entered a certain age or date of birth, somebody should be able to verify that actually this information you've given us is authentic, you're not a child, so that we are able to protect our users. In case somebody is trying to be an adult, yet they're actually children, we are able to either give them information that is appropriate or products that are appropriate for their age, or find means of worst case scenario, banning them from a platform that is not appropriate for them. So I come from a point of, we as internet entrepreneurs, what are we doing to ensure that the African child is protected in such an environment where children have access to phones, to internet, not just for leisure, but also for education?
Okay, thank you very much. And to you, good luck.
Thank you very much. I would wish to a little bit veer from what others have said, but remembering what happened on 16th June 1976, it was these young people were went on the streets demanding their rights to learn in their native language, and also how they were the inadequacy in the quality of education that they were receiving. If we look back 45, 46, 47 years after, when as my colleagues were speaking, I'm thinking of those villages out there, those children whom you see running on those playgrounds without grass, you know, with those balls, and they are running around, they are going to fetch water. They are happy lives out there, but do they know their rights in terms of can we have children in those villages, in Karamoja, wherever, in Kisoro, that they can rise up again, or can they be helped by civil society organizations to write letters to their leaders, to the politicians, to the local governments, and tell them that we would wish you to put us on the agenda? So for me, it's a reflective moment, and I visited these places where these things happened. It was so bad at the time that the South Africans felt that they were being pushed over. It was just about you to get the basics to survive. But today, as everyone was saying, we wake up in a world that is moving so fast. So I want to see the opportunities that have been put. For example, when we go back to our curriculum, and most especially in secondary school, senior 1, and I think up to senior 3 now, we might have the first bunch of candidates who have been asked to, who have taken on a curriculum that helps them use the digital space. For example, it could be phones, it could be laptops. Actually, I have a senior 1 student. I was asked to buy a laptop, but unfortunately this time I'm unable to buy that laptop to give her to be able to do research at school. So I think the curriculum has started, has given us an opportunity to start talking about some of these things. But like Marion was talking about the businesses, I think we need to wake up and ask, for example, companies like MTN, Airtel, Stanbic, and all these big companies, maybe they start donating these gadgets, computers, phones to some of these rural schools. And I think Airtel is doing something with the United Nations in Uganda. They recently school at Chitende with the school in West Nile. I could have followed that, and I was watching it on TV. And I felt that, yes, students who are up country or young people up country can also access the laboratories of these other people in Kampala and be able. But for me, supporting Marion, what she has said is that now that the curriculum has given us an opportunity, there is a policy for us to have these gadgets to help our children do research when they are studying, because the curriculum at secondary school has kind of changed. Even I was there in first term and they were telling me how the scores are. It took me time to understand. The point is, how do we now provide access? And for me, there is a saying in my language. I don't want to say the language, but they say, don't fear to sleep because you will dream. So I think for me, we rather dream, we rather sleep and dream. So that we have the policy that's giving us an opportunity to use the digital spaces, use the digital equipment, but now we want the equipment. And we wish on this Day of the African Child in Uganda, if we could have people who can rise up and say, I have donated 100 computers, 100 laptops, 100 phones to this school, it would be so good, so that we don't leave everyone. But out there, when I think of some places out there in up country, even here in Kampala, by the way, when you pass through areas of Kasokoso, when you go through areas like Nansa, there are some places where you go and you find, you look at these innocent children, they are playing on these fields with stones, and you look at them. But of course, also we know that in our families, those of us who are able to get the gadgets, sometimes it's also a tug of war, where a child wants to watch the cartoons instead of maybe watching robotic innovations or coding, but they are looking at certain things. So it's another tug of war in family. But on this day, I must say that, but as we go on after COVID, like our colleagues have said, we really have to look at, I don't know, as they are going to read the budget in Uganda and in East Africa. I don't know how much money has been set aside for the equipment in order to support maybe the rural schools. So these are debates, but I also appreciate the debate and the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for giving that context and for those views. You know, this is interesting, and thank you for also honoring the Soweto children. For context, about figures of about 20,000 students in the 1976. Pupils, actually young people, went on the streets to demand educational reform, that they be taught in their languages, but also to condemn segregation that was happening during the apartheid era of South Africa. These children stood up for their rights to better education, to quality education, and demanded. Sadly, the apartheid regime then cracked down on them by killing students, those students and pupils. Numbers have put it that 174 children were killed and thousands injured. Others have stated before that over 400 to 700 children were killed. And that's why it's actually called a massacre. Now, we have noted, people here have noted both the good and the bad when it comes to digital rights. I want, and they did that in summary. I now want our conversation is to dig deep into what the benefits of digital rights or of digital connectivity can be to young people in Africa. We are still having challenges, and as I mentioned earlier, that whereas many youth all over the world are getting more connected, young people and the youth are getting more connected on the internet, Africa is still a bit lagging behind. African adolescents, 60% are not connected, young people in Africa, while in Europe, like I said, for example, only 4% are not connected. So I want us to highlight what we think are the benefits and how young people can leverage the digital spaces. We shall later, of course, talk about the dangers, but then we want to talk about the good and also how digital spaces can be leveraged by young people, for the betterment. I'll begin again with you, Lynn, who works also with young people, in your program where you work. You have seen, I believe, the good of the internet. You have seen how much it can be of benefit to them. So you could help us highlight its importance, the importance of digital spaces when it comes to children, and also when it comes to their rights, among them sexual reproductive health rights that you work on a daily.
So like you said, or like in my introduction, I talked about how I work with Richer Hand Uganda, which is a youth-centered organization that works with young people. So we've been in existence for over 11 years now, and we are known for being up to the trends. We've used social media and digital spaces from when they were not used by everyone. We say using Facebook, we say using Twitter, we say using all these digital spaces to create digital advocacy, to create awareness of the work we do and the issues that affect young people. And we've seen this be of benefit now, because now we see that the world is moving digital now. We are seeing other organizations joining the digital spaces, joining the digital movement. We are having these online Zoom meetings. Like I said, in lockdown, we had nowhere to meet besides online spaces. That's who knew would be using Zoom meetings or Google Meet or any of those online meeting platforms. We didn't know that. Some of us didn't even know Zoom before the lockdown. But then after the lockdown, I've seen that there is a lot of importance on using digital spaces. Digital spaces are very important and vital in this age and era because of the access to information and education that we can get from them. We've been able, nowadays it's more like you go online and get all the information. Of course, all the information some of it could be right, some of it could be wrong, but we all know that because of the digital era, you don't need to do a lot to get what you need. You can just go on Google, you can just go on, now we have the AI, ChatGPT. So everything is moving digital and everything is being simplified. So you just have to have your phone, you just have to have internet to access all these things. Before you would have to read dozens of books to get what you wanted, but now you can just go online. Young people are getting information on TikTok. Young people are getting information on every other platform. People are having fun. There are people who are addicted to these digital spaces as well. So besides access and information and education, there are economic opportunities. The digital spaces open up the opportunities for us African young people. We can engage in freelance work. We are in a gig era right now, and we have seen influencers. Who knew influencers would be actually a thing? But now we have young people who have gone to school, but their profession is being an influencer. You just get paid per whatever gig you get, and people are getting a lot of money. These influencers are getting actually a lot of money. and you're just doing this in the comfort of your home. You're just doing this with your brain. You're just seated with your phone and you're just influencing something. You're creating change. You're maybe creating awareness about sexual abuse. You're creating awareness about persons living with disabilities. You're creating all these things or doing all these things in the comfort of your home or just with your phone and your mind. And that's how people are getting money. The digital space has also helped young people showcase their talent. Young people are innovative, young people are creative. We have content creators right now. These are people who are hired. I think even advertising is kind of going off the rail and it's more of like content creators. I don't know, when you're on Instagram, when you're on TikTok, you're seeing content creators everywhere. Communications specialists or officers are paid highly nowadays because you're the one communicating to the people. You're the one who knows how to sell the brand to the people, and people are going to engage with you, with your content at the end of the day. So there is also expression and activism. I feel like this is one of the things as young people or as an African child would gain from this, expression and activism. As Richard Hand, we have done so many campaigns online. We've done the Silence is Deadly campaign about gender-based violence. We've done the Undo the Taboo campaign that we recently finished about menstrual health management and climate justice, how the two are interrelated. We've done so many campaigns. We've done the Brave Girls, the Brave Girls campaign, whereby we're empowering young girls, we're empowering young people to actually know that they can take up space, that their voices are important, their voices need to be heard. They are at the forefront of everything. Uganda, 75% of Ugandans are actually young people, but in most cases, actually, we are the most unemployed. So meaning we have a country that has 75% of young people who are very dependent on the other percentage, that is the older people. So these digital spaces have been a platform for us to express ourselves and to do activism. Right now we released a feature film that's called When You Become Me. This is a feature film about disability inclusion. We've grown up in a society where persons living with disabilities have been called weird names like Chigala, like those are those abusive names. And actually growing up looking at these people, you'd think something is wrong with them, you think they are cursed or bewitched. But you have created this film to actually create awareness about the lived experiences of these young people who are persons living with disabilities. And 70% of the cast of this feature film is actually persons living with disabilities, young people living with disabilities, and they're actresses, they're acting. And this has created a big platform for them. This is a career push. They know that they're not alone. They know that they're important, and they're actually having employment. They're having something to do for themselves. They are paid for being actors and actresses. We also have like young persons living with albinism. Before, how we looked at albinism even in the past, these were young children or people who would be actually sacrificed. We've had those stories whereby a witch doctor would just want them for their blood and all that. But we are creating this awareness using digital spaces to show that these are actually humans just like us. They have rights. They're not supposed to be sacrificed. They're not for sacrifices. It's just like it's just an issue they have, but they are actually actual humans and they have rights and they don't need to be killed or sacrificed or used for whichever reason. And so these social media platforms are very good because they connect us to the global community. Because when you're advocating for issues like this, you may think it's only in Uganda, but you're going to see that actually persons with disabilities also face the same challenges in America as well. There are people facing the same challenges. So we are connected for the same cause, for the greater good on these digital platforms as young people. Then health and well-being. I think this will be the last. Health and well-being. We are in an era of digital connectivity. We're in an era of online, and we use a lot of online platforms. And in this sense, there is a lot of issues that come with it as well. But we have seen that digital platforms have been able to improve our health and well-being. There are so many apps that have been created to address some of the things that we face as women. I don't know, the ladies here, you know, the Flow app, that innovation like the Flow app that can help you monitor your period, know when you're like ovulating, know when you're like it's safe to have sex and protection, like just to know yourself and know when you're going to have your period next. If you're having any when your period is not consistent, like it will let you know. We have seen so many mental health apps that have come up to help people who are facing mental health challenges. Of course, with digital platforms, there comes challenges as well. There's so much online abuse, and in a way, it contributes to unhealthy living among young people, the suicides, the depression, the anxiety. And we all work, we know how it can get hectic, it can get busy. But sometimes you don't have money maybe to pay for a therapy session to talk to someone. But there are apps in place that are going to help with this. There are apps that are going to, you know, connect you to this. We've seen apps that do referrals that connect you to the nearest health like facility. And this in a way helps our well-being as people, because you know the nearest place you're going to go to, the nearest thing you're going to go to if you're even in a different country or in a different environment that you're not used to. So it makes things easy. We have seen things like Safe Border that can even deliver for you drugs. So there is this whole comfort and the importance of well-being that comes with these digital spaces. And then there is innovation and creativity, definitely. We have seen so many young people become innovative and creative. We are seeing young people who are doing art. I don't know if you've heard of that art that is, I've forgotten the name of that art, but it's digital. So you're not maybe using paint, but you're doing your art online and people are seeing it. You're being creative. You're being creative in your music. You're being creative in anything that you're doing as a young person. We've seen young people who are creative, as Richard Hand Uganda spoke, come up with an ecosystem to reach out to all young people, because we want to reach out to all young people in their different diversities. Even those, besides those who you have access to internet or smartphones, what of those people, young people in hard to reach areas? We came up with a referral, an e-referral card that helps refer these young people to different health centers. We came up with the USSD code. And if you have a future phone, Capesa phone, you can easily just input the USSD code and get information.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Over to you, Marion. You, of course, in the spaces you occupy, you know, undoubtedly you utilize and use these digital spaces. You could help us share how, in your perspective, young people are interacting with them and how much they are impacting the young people.
Thank you, Martin. If there's one country I admire, is China. I think China has embraced technology so much that kids from a young age are the ones these days coming up with the apps that we are using. Most of the apps we are using, the games sometimes we are using, are being done by young kids. It's because they have set up structures where kids can easily use technology in safe spaces, but for productive gain. So I think as the African child, we need to empower them to use technology in a way that is productive. I like that Lynn mentioned some of the different ways that we are currently taking advantage of technology in terms of expressing our creativity. Remember when I started my discussion, I mentioned how in the past kids used not have voices because they just had to be seen, not to be heard. But with technology right now, kids are being heard. They are expressing themselves through music, they are expressing themselves through dance, through art, and with tech, it's not limiting them to just where they are, but they have access to all people who are online. And it's my honest opinion that technology is here to stay And we just need to use them in structures that are productive. Also, when you look at the way technology works, is that youth are very curious. Youth, young adults, young children are very curious human beings. And usually they're the first people to adopt to new technologies because they're very experimental. We have such a huge problem currently in Uganda and across Africa, and that's unemployment. You'll agree with me that the traditional jobs are no longer enough to take in everyone. And every day, Uganda happens to be one of the most fertile countries. We have people joining the job market. We have people being born. So I feel like technology offers us an opportunity to create untraditional jobs using these platforms that we have. And it can be one of the opportunities we use to solve the unemployment problem. I am happy to note that so many young people who have embraced technology early are currently coming up with startups that are mainly solving social issues through the use of technology. We have many companies being managed by young people because they have been introduced to technology early, so they know what they can do with the platforms and the opportunities that have been presented to them, so they can use technology to be productive. I believe technology can be one of the solutions to some of the societal problems that we have if rightly used. It is boosting entrepreneurship. These days, you meet someone at 18 and they tell you, I'm the CEO of such and such a company. And it's all about tech, because sometimes you don't need so much capital to engage in some of these things, because the capital is your skills. So you don't need money to invest in the traditional kind of businesses. So we have these days so many young people joining the job market so early. At 15, someone's already doing digital work, supporting different brands, because it's a game of the mind, just being able to know how to use data, how to use information to get people to do things in a certain way. So for me, this is an opportunity for young people, and for young people, if used in a productive way in the right structures. That's what I would say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marion, for giving us that perspective and highlighting how young people should use this to leverage specifically their entrepreneurial skills. And now going to Viola. Viola, you're an entrepreneur. Okay, Viola has jumped off. I want now to bring Good Luck. And before Good Luck comes, of course, we have to also pay homage and pay tribute actually to the young people who have used platforms for social change. We have seen young people use online digital spaces, the internet, to bring about change in various aspects. Black Lives Matter, young people going on the internet, among them people below 18, mainly Gen Zs, going on the internet to highlight the social evils that the social evil that racism and the killing of Black people in the US is. We saw End SARS, which was largely mobilized by young people. Me Too movement, young people very active. And each and every day, there are very many campaigns championed by young people, Gen Zs, using these digital tools to highlight the plight. And certainly, when I mention all these names, and also the last generation movement in Europe about the environment, Fridays for Future. Fridays for Future was actually young people below 18. They started this and moved it, mobilized it online and name it. And there are very many that are still ongoing. But in all this conversation, I'm failing to see the African child, and it's a challenge. How are we as a society going to bridge that gap, to ensure that young people in Africa, the African child is inclusive, to ensure that the African child is involved in these spaces. And I'll bring that to you. Good luck when your time comes. I see Viola has come back. I want to follow up on the entrepreneurial side. Viola, what do you think needs to be done to make young people, or to leverage these digital tools to make the digital spaces more inclusive to young people and more accommodative for young people, to spur their innovation, to create opportunities for them so that they are as competitive as young people elsewhere? Marion has told us that many of these tools we are using, digital tools, are majorly made by young people in countries like China and the rest of the developed world. So what can we do as a society, as an African society, to ensure that young people are involved? I mean, again, good luck. You can also add to that, seeing that Viola has, the network is disturbing her. But over to you, good luck.
Thank you very much. There's something that disturbs me in our region, is that every time we look at the side of everything, and me, I tend not to want to go there. But the digital spaces can help us being creative. And when you're creative, you don't really need to look at those things that pull you down. And for me, it starts in the homes where we are, those who have opportunities to have children, to tell them that you can do it, you can make it. And for me, the African child must be helped at the home level to be creative, not to be told how everything is not there, how we have bad roads, how we have bad schools, how we have everything is just bad, everything is inadequate. So for me, I think we need to look at these children and say that the 174 or to 400 children who died in South Africa, that they died for us. It's like us, the Christian, when we say Jesus died for us on the cross. We should never really carry excess baggage, but we must look into the future with hope, courage, but as everyone was talking about creativity. But then I also want to talk about the connection. The African child will not rise up alone. I was looking at some statistics in terms of the startups, the money which came to Africa in this last year. It was $4 billion US. In Uganda, we managed to get around $80 million in terms of those who are in the startup spaces. So the connection, whom are we connecting our children with? Are we first of all in the African setup? Are we connecting with other countries? Just in our neighborhood here, Kenya, everybody is coming to set up this and that in Kenya. The world is actually in Nairobi. When you go down south in Rwanda, when you go to amazing things are being done in Tanzania. How are we connecting our children to these opportunities? Then lastly, on that, there also comes with the element of collaboration, that our children must be helped, that those who are able should be able to collaborate with those who have the ideas. Now, for example, if I had money and I wanted to help the young people, where do I find them? Where? So for me, and I like Civic Space TV for giving this opportunity to us, that we must tell children that they must rise up. When they have ideas, they must find a way of putting their ideas to be seen, whether on social media. But interestingly, it's about the nudity. It's about people who are asking funny questions, funny things like to get. These days you hear, I want to get numbers, but I can tell you that you don't need numbers to have good ideas, and you don't know who is watching. For example, Twitter, under Elon Musk, he has opened up Twitter. When you pay $8 a month, that you can be able to put so much and the world will be able to follow you. You can put videos, you can put all these things, and you'll be able to attract the attention of the world. So for me, as I end on this one, is that let's be positive. Let's wake up and say, even if it is one child, the ghetto kids recently, when they were in the Britain Got Talent, something like that. I mean, I was on every other time. I was like, are we taking it? Are we taking it? And I don't know these children, but because they are from here, I felt there was that connection. But for me, I don't like it every other time when we look at what those things that pull us down. And I hope that our government, through especially UCC, Uganda Communications Commission, that we will continue to see computers reaching out so that our children are able to look into their research, look at things that help them. Lastly, I'm looking at university students from Makerere and the scientist called Niwagaba Charles. They are working on a fertilizer through urine. And I'm following them keenly. I've seen people from Sweden come to see what they are doing. So I think there's so much when we encourage each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to bring in Viola. Viola, how can young people leverage these digital tools? How can the African child leverage these digital tools? But also, how can society, government, stakeholders create an enabling environment to spur entrepreneurship and also real economic activity that benefits the young people in these digital spaces? How can we spur entrepreneurship and an environment that enables young people without, of course, violating their rights, knowing that young people at least below 16 are not supposed to be engaged in any form of employment. Again, even for those ones above 16, any form of employment or work that interferes with their school. So how do we sort of navigate this and yet spur entrepreneurship and real gainful kind of activities for young people in these digital spaces?
Thank you, Martin. I have been following lots of young Indian developers that are teaching other children or other people who are interested in coding on how to code. So in short, these are very young children, about 8 or 12-year-olds, and they are so good at coding that people are now paying them to do what they do. But even YouTube pays them for the content they upload. So they are still able to do what they do, which is also because through sharing, you're also learning. They teach, they learn, and they are still earning from it. I will also give an example of Ghetto Kids and the Nigerian comedian. I think she has now grown older, but she started out as a child, Manuela. So she used digital platforms to promote her career as a comedian. And definitely she had support from other people, but they used digital platforms to promote her career. The Ghetto Kids have used the online platforms to promote their career as well. And I think they are Masaka Kids, who are one of the top most watched YouTube channels in Uganda. So in short, children are able to get economic empowerment on online platforms if they have the right support. Also, we can look at new concepts. Usually we learn things from people around us. We learn from people who have taught us what they know, but the internet is opening up so much knowledge to people. So people are able to learn new concepts on how to approach life, on how to do things. And I believe this is helping them improve their skills and improve their knowledge and how to live life, especially now that the world has changed. So people are able to learn faster from TikTok, from YouTube, from all these other digital platforms. I think Lynn talked about activism. I think she's called Nakato, the environment and climate activist, who is, in my opinion, started out as a young person. So there are all these platforms that young children or young people can take advantage of and be able to brand themselves, create profiles, and be economically empowered. But he also mentioned on how do we navigate the space. Yes, there are opportunities, but there are also challenges. So how do we find a middle ground? You realize that there are lots of adults who are using children to create content. So it's the children that are known, but it's the adults that are benefiting from this content. I don't think it is right, and these kinds of adults should know that it's not right, and therefore they should either be paying the children or they should just stop it, because it's not really right that you're just exploiting a child to get the numbers and to get a huge following, yet it's for your own good. I think we also need strict laws and governance put in place so that people who are exploiting children, we know of child pornography, we know of all these things that people do to children on the internet. So people need to be punished if they are doing wrong, especially using children on the internet. And we need to also have to think about accessibility and affordability so that everybody is included on this, on accessing and using the digital channels. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for taking us into the last segment of this conversation, and that is the challenges that are associated with these spaces. Of course, young people being a vulnerable group and being at the stage at which they are prone to all sorts of violations, and many of these violations, of course, stem from their use of digital tools. In 2021, on her Twitter page, the Minister for Education, Mrs. Janet Museveni, warned, that was in September 2021, warned on the repercussions or warned on the dangers of these digital spaces, and specifically social medias. She called it social media addiction. She stated that, and I would quote, that the problem of social media or digital addiction is relatively new, but it has really reached all over the world. It has been called the modern day addictive drug, like tobacco or alcohol. It leads to poor school performance, breakdown of family communication, and delinquent behaviors. Studies show that youth worldwide spend an average of 7 hours every day online. And she, of course, called upon the young people to have a downtime on social media, and called upon young people and the families to bond together instead of just spending time on the digital spaces. Again, of course, UNICEF and other bodies, including the African Committee on the Welfare of the Child, have also, the African Children's Committee on the Welfare. These have also commented and talked about the dangers that digital spaces cause. Among them, of course, the risks of sexual abuse, violence, talked about pornography, of course, the stress factors that are associated, including depression, suicidal thoughts that stem from, much of the social media activity, cyberbullying, name them. You know, there are quite a number. Sexual exploitation, trafficking has also come from social media. There is also now Uganda has a pandemic called betting. Young people bet as early as primary school. They are involved in online betting, which causes danger, but also, I mean, it leads not only to depression, mental health issues, but also dropping out of school, and also causes tensions between the young people and their parents. Much of this money the young people used to bet is not their money. And that's a bit dangerous. So I'm asking you, how do we ensure safety? We have underscored the importance of online and digital spaces, but then we've also taken note that they can have adverse effects on the young people. So how do we then navigate this? How do we carefully ensure that there is really proper use, and there is accessibility, there is, of course, availability, and there is use really, without necessarily young people being left behind, because the world is not going to stop, you know? Then on the other hand, how do we also ensure that it is safe for young people, that it is not going to cause them the adverse effects, you know, as we have highlighted? And for this, I'll begin with you. Good luck, and I'll ask each one to use about 2 minutes to highlight this, you know, what they think should be done, and then we shall call it a show.
Thank you very much. Like I have said before here, is that when you look at through the Ministry of Health documents every year, they are terming internet abuse. It's now becoming like a disease. Almost around 1,000 people were admitted for having been affected by the use of the internet. And I think growingly this coming year, I think they'll be giving guidance on what can be done in order to secure our young people. As I said, when you look at other countries at 4% people who are not connected, and us, we are at 60% not connected, I think let's keep dreaming. The other challenges will be there. Yes, the minister talked, but for me, I think the Minister of Education, Mama Janet Museveni, I would ask her to give us more budget in terms of the equipment, because they are, for example, in the school laboratories, what you can do is that you can limit a number of applications which can be put on those gadgets, so that children are not able to see some of these things that could lead maybe to what others are talking about. So I'm still looking at the side where we need to tap into these advantages. Then as we, of course, maybe have more organizations and the Ministry of Health come to guide as to how we should be able to handle the dangers that come with this one. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Good luck. And to you, Lynn. Okay, let's have Marion. Over to you, Marion. Okay, Viola, over to you.
Thank you, Martin. What I think can be done is, first of all, look at the child protection laws we have in Uganda that are general, both online and offline. And then we also look at the laws that we have. For example, the Computer Misuse Act was declared null and void. But what are those laws that we have in place that can protect children when they are using the internet? I think that's where we can start from. And then secondly, do these children know they are right? Do they know that for as long as they haven't consented to something, I have a right to maybe sue, maybe to say no, that I don't want to feature in a certain video. And how much information are we sharing with these children so that they know the possible bad things that can happen to them by sharing their information online? We've seen cases of child trafficking and human trafficking in general because people are giving away too much information on the internet. What activities are these children engaging in? We see children taking part in betting, others are taking part in things that shouldn't really be for children. So if we get to understand what activities these children are taking part in while accessing gadgets and being online, I think for me it is a starting point on safeguarding them while they access and utilize digital platforms. Again, thank you so much, Civic Face TV, for this platform to discuss Day of African Child, and this year's theme in particular, digital rights in a digital environment.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Marion.
I dropped off, but I last had the question on what needs to be done. Is that what we are still answering?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. I think for me, I start with the parents, because the first point of contact for these kids is the parents. We've had this discussion before where we say parents need to take an active role in influencing how kids use technology and these platforms. And I won't say that parents shouldn't expose their kids to these digital tools or technology, because it will be a disservice to these kids, given that the world where we are now, these are the skills that are required for the job market. My thinking is parents should instead be actively engaged in how kids use these platforms and the technology. And that means setting parental controls, watching or monitoring what the kids are watching, also monitoring their behavior, monitoring how much time the kids spend on these gadgets. And then it's also important, what are they doing? Because once we are able to be responsible and help these kids use these platforms responsibly, then in the long run, it will be for their own advantage. Next to that, I'll still go back to businesses. Businesses are the ones that bring up all these technologies. During their product management phase, or when they're still putting the products together, they need to be cognizant of the people that are actually going to use these technologies and these tools. So when they're developing them, they should have controls, mitigations to safeguard the end user. So they need to protect the kids in how they do product development so that kids are safe, okay? Then also speaking to what government can do, government needs to increase access to technologies. I like that Lucky kept on mentioning how there's so many kids in the rural areas that will never have access to what we are talking about right now. And yet it's their right. So what is government doing about it? I know they introduced ICT in schools, but some kids have never even seen how a computer looks like. Some kids don't even know how to turn on a computer because they have never had access to it. What are we doing about that? Okay. I would like to encourage corporations, organizations to take up CSR pillars that are connected to supporting education in terms of maybe providing some of these technologies to these rural schools, rural places, setting up centers where kids can access these things. So they may not have it in extensively like how other lucky kids may have it at home, but at least they should have access and be exposed to some of these things. So if you're a company and you're looking for a good CSR activity, this is one of the things you should look at. And these kids will always remember such and such a company did this and this and this, and that's why we're able to get the skills to do this and this and this. This is the future. So we need to invest in this and support the next generation of young people to become exactly what the market needs. That's my submission. Thank you so much for this platform to discuss some of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marion, for that. I thank each one who has been a part of this conversation, and we thank the Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV for convening this. We've held this in honor of the Day of the African Child, which was celebrated on the 16th, but importantly, to highlight the need for young people to be included in this digital space. In these digital spaces, of course, taking into consideration the best interest of the children. And for this matter, their best interests include quality education, accessibility to information, of course, access to health services, and very importantly, best interests have to do with the mental health of the young people that are using the digital spaces. So we indeed call upon the government to put in place mechanisms that ensure that there is safe access to digital tools by the young people. I think as a country, we should prioritize ICT. As developing countries, ICT is one of those areas where we have the potential to grow, to reach where the developed world is, because we may not go into the primitive accumulation of wealth like the developed nations went through. If we're going to think we shall use their models, we shall never develop, because in any case, there are newer human rights regimes that do not allow making or growing the way they did, because the way they did was barbaric and primitive. So all we have are such new measures such as technology, and this is information technology. We have to leverage these tools to develop the economies we want to develop. That's the only way we shall catch up, and that's the only way we shall bridge the development gaps and the many injustices that exist in the global economy. And we begin this by making sure that young people are inclusive, to make sure that young people are encouraged to innovate, to make sure that young people are in these digital spaces that encourage innovation, digital spaces that encourage justice, that encourage respect for human rights, that these digital spaces that encourage quality education, which will meet the global standards. We have to take the standards of the country. We also have to put into place protective measures. We have the data communication. We have data communication laws, data protection laws, cybersecurity laws, including the computer misuse, laws. We have, of course, laws that protect children, but Uganda, of course, should also ratify the very many international instruments that give power and also recognize the rights of young people on and offline. And Uganda has to ratify some of those conventions that are on and protocols that are both on the African Union level, but also on the UN level and other bodies we are party to, so that we have a better future, so that we have a better tomorrow by securing our young people. After all, this government says that their term is called securing the future. And there is nothing as securing the future as ensuring that young people are fully digitally secured. I've been your host, Martin, and I wish you a great week. Thank you to our dear conversationists, and I wish you a great time.